Now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to call today's meeting to order. I would like to call for the approval of the minutes for June 8th, and I will abstain since I was absent.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion or changes recommended? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4-0. Before we begin, Commissioner Baker, I want to thank you for coming by Sunday and enjoyed our conversation at my dad's previewing. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Would you start reports today, sir?
Sure. Again, I know during your difficult times, all of the county commissioners, and I'm sure many other elected officials, county staff, they all had you in your prayers. And for me, I didn't get to see your brother, but it gives back your family. I've known many of your siblings and been around your dad and your siblings for a long time, since the early 70s.
Earlier, talking like 1970.
Yeah, and I know your brother Mike was a big influence on me when I was a freshman in high school. He was a senior, and we both ran track. And at that time, I remember a lot of times when a teacher was out, they had a student cover the class. And back then in phys ed, when the phys ed teacher was out, Jeff's brother Mike, Jeff's older brother Mike, who was a tremendous track athlete at Williamsport High School. I watched him when I was a freshman. I watched him win the state track meet in the 400, and that motivated me to do my best performance ever that year as a freshman in the 3200. But anyhow, back to phys ed class, his brother was always the one selected to cover the phys ed class for Mr. Smith if he had to be out or for whatever reason, and I was in that particular class. And of course his brother liked to run, and I can remember when he used to get upset with some of the students if they weren't acting the way that he thought they should act or doing what he wanted them to do. He'd tell them if they didn't straighten out that he was going to take them out and make them run, and he was going to lead. And he said there's only one guy in this class that could keep up with me, and that's Terry Baker. So I always remember little stories like that, and that's so it was a very emotional time for you and your family, and I just want to let you know that I know all of the elected officials here that I serve with had you in their prayers.
Well, thank you for that. For the record, my brother Mike and Terry could run like the wind back in those days.
So we were lucky athletes.
Thank you, Terry.
So, and then the other comment that I'd have, the Humane Society put on a wonderful event over at Mr. Bowman's barn there in Williamsport, the luau. They call it the luau, not the luau. And I thought it was a tremendous turnout. I don't know the numbers that they normally get for that event, but I know it was packed. Everybody was, you could tell everybody just loved being away from COVID, being out, being around people, and doing what they do best is, talk to people and have, a lot of love for animals, at least that organization, the Humane Society. And I did get to talk to my friend Paulie, talked to him a lot. And you're on the board there at the Humane Society, and tremendous advocate for our animals and to make sure that they're taken care of in our community. So just want to thank the Humane Society for inviting us to that event, putting it on, and it was, I had a great time. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kiefer, would you comment, please?
I have a few things here to say. I'll touch on a couple that Commissioner Baker had commented about. Again, our sympathies on the passing of your father, Jeff.
Thank you.
I know how great it was to see him at all the events that you would attend. You would bring him along with you, and 98 years of age. That's something to be proud of. At first,
years ago, he rejected, then he loved them. I guess it was the pork and sauerkraut and the spaghetti, but thank you, Commissioner.
He's a better politician than you.
I appreciate that.
I had no idea about student substitute teachers, though. That's interesting. Also, thank the Humane Society. They had a good event. And I believe they also had their largest intake of animals recently in the last week from a Washington County home. and I know they were under a lot of stress from that, so this event that was held certainly helps out, and I believe they did a special fundraiser online and was able to collect around $30,000 at last count to care for those animals. So just again, thank the Humane Society for the work they do for the animals in the community. A couple other comments here. The economic stimulus, I know the county has received the first half of our $29 million that was allotted to the county. I received a lot of comments from citizens about how we might spend that, how we should do that. I'd like to see if there's any interest in maybe taking an unofficial, unscientific survey, but allowing our public to comment in some manner like we do for a public hearing on another matter, just get their feedback. Obviously, there's certain categories of how we can spend that money and what it can and can't be spent on, so the sky's not the limit necessarily, but I'd like to hear from the public in some manner. This is one-time infusion of money that we're likely not to see during our terms ever again, and for that reason, I hope we don't see it ever again, honestly, but I'd like to hear more from the public about what they would like it best spent on. Personally, I'd like to see us find a way to distribute it throughout the county on different projects and not necessarily focus on one, but make sure the entire community benefits. On June 18th and 19th, the Dolman Black Heritage Museum will be holding their annual Juneteenth celebration. I want to thank the commissioners. I know we decided to help sponsor that event in lieu of their annual masquerade ball that they sponsored. That won't be held this year, so we'll take that same amount of money that we normally allotted to the masquerade ball as a table sponsor and help to support that event. It will take place in the University Plaza over the weekend, June 18th and 19th. And congratulations to Kevin Bokum, the student representative from the Board of Education, who's now was recently appointed to be the student representative on the State Board of Education. And that's a pretty neat accomplishment for a young fella, so I just wish him the best. And again, it's always good to see someone in Washington County represent our county and our state at the state level. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Burkett?
Just welcome back, Jeff, and
Thank you.
condolences to your family. And other than that, I don't have
I
anything.
appreciate
today.
those sentiments. Thank you. Commissioner Wagner?
Good morning. I was honored to be able to attend your Buck's viewing and funeral and graveside service. It was really great to see all the people that honored Buck on that 2 days. And there's not many World War II vets left. And it was, you could tell that he was held in reverence for that. And it was also great to see Rusty Baker and his honor guard there at the graveside service with the gun salute and the taps. So it was, I think you should be proud of the people that were there to honor your dad.
Thank you.
I also attended the luau, as Terry said. I missed you, Terry. You come in right after I left. I think I stayed about an hour and a half, but it was pretty good. Yeah, I did see Paulie. He was up taking pictures of people coming up the path. So he was taking pictures everywhere. But it was a good cause. It's like Wayne said, I think it was like 99 dogs and 20-some cats last week or the week before. I don't know what you do with all those animals that have been mistreated or neglected, but I'm sure they'll find a way to get them back into a good life. They do a pretty good job out there. And was able to attend the Atkins Automotive grand opening and open house. They're located out 40 East out of Hagerstown across from the Mason-Dixon drag strip. It's just a good family. They invested a lot in the community out there, and they had a pretty good turnout. A lot of fire supporters, they work on their equipment, were there, and it was almost like a little fair. It was very nice. And I think I agree, Wayne, involve the public in that. I agree with you 100%. Maybe figure out somehow to get some input from that. And I think today you might be able to, the Commission on Aging is sponsoring a vaccination out at Ag Center. Yeah, so I think it's 10 to 2. So they're still trying to get I know they're running around, the health department's giving shots to homebound people. They're trying the best they can to get as many shots in arms as they can. I think that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Wagner. I did attend the luau. One thing I also want to add, there was a truck accident up near Hancock, and there was a truck with cattle with over 50 head of cattle that escaped. So almost in the same time frame in 1 week, they had an incident with 50 heads of cattle, and then the 100 some cats and dogs that were being hoarded. More important, I want to thank everyone who provided some form of care or service or prayers for my dad, a World War II veteran, from the paramedics who showed up at the house, to Meredith's, to Doey's house. If you got an extra penny, extra dollar, Doey's house hospice would be the place you'd want to maybe put a priority on that. You'd never imagine the care that they provide, no matter your income, no matter whether you have insurance, the care and dignity that they provide in the last days of lives of your loved one, from bathing them to providing a veterans military service for my dad, is an important service to our community. And one day it could be you in there. A little extra arm twisting on that comment. But again, a special note of thanks to all who came out and respected and honored my dad. I also, too, agree with the public poll. We did something on a poll one time, the best time to schedule our evening meetings and things like that. It's good to get input and gather that in, so I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, staff, I'll just, if you just, I'll get with staff on that, and we'll get with PR, and we'll come up with some thoughts and recommendations about that, and we'll provide that information to the commissioners to see if that's what you're thinking.
And I think you and I had a talk about honoring our employees. We usually do that event in May for the retirees, so I think you're working on that.
Yeah,
I think we need to get.
Obviously, we're working that with Human Resources. Larry's there in the back. Yeah, we normally do that in May, and we didn't do that last year because of COVID, but we are going to work on, we're thinking about the fall. We're going to work through that. Summer, a lot of people are busy on vacation, so I think we're shooting for the fall, right, Larry?
That's correct. Sometime shortly after Labor Day, we're pulling that.
Okay.
Okay.
So
And,
we'll let you know as soon as we get that scheduled.
And one last comment about Atkins Motors, Terry, if you remember, they came upstairs and asked for an overlay to expand their little tiny garage to build a pole building. 6 years later, they invested in nearly $1 million property, building a larger facility to service emergency vehicles. Quite a success story for that young couple, and to see the family and friends there celebrating their opening, it was proud. That what small business in Washington County folks are all about. So that concludes my reports. My report. Next would be staff comments. I believe, and Susan, I have you listed. You guys come forward, introduce yourselves in the matter. See, I remembered it this time. Gotcha. And you're on there too, right? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Linda, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Jonathan Horowitz, Washington County Department of Business Development.
Linda Spence, Washington County Department of Business Development.
Good morning, Commissioners. I have two of my hardworking staff members here who have two pieces of information that I want to share with you. So I'll let Linda go first.
I was going to let you.
I'm here to provide an update on the latest round of business stabilization grants that came through Maryland Department of Commerce. So currently, our department is finishing up the administration of 4 grant programs. So just to provide the commissioners with an update of where we are on these programs, the first program was a food and beverage providers stabilization program. We have finalized these programs, and check requests for the first 3 programs are in budget and finance. We are anticipating on the next check run to have checks out to the first 3 programs. And the last program, which is nonprofit, we are expecting the transfer of the money from the State Department of Housing and Community Development to come in later at the end of this week or possibly at the beginning of next week. So the check is kind of in the mail on that one, but we've already staged ourselves up to administer that program as soon as the money's received. But for the details, the food and beverage providers program, we were able to award 69 recipients. The maximum award up to was $12,000 for that one. So these programs had a little different caveat in them from the state, in that we were to prioritize any recipient, any business that had not received any grant funding prior to this. So if you had applied for these programs and had not received any other grant money from the county, then you were prioritized to receive money first. So the awards to those priorities for food and beverage were $12,000 each, and then after the priorities came in, we lowered the total amount from $12,000 to $7,500 in an effort to reach more businesses in the community. So we awarded anybody that was not a priority $7,500. And like I said, it was 69 recipients. That program awarded a total of $549,142.10. The next program was an accommodations provider program. We awarded 14 recipients. The maximum award for that program was up to $20,000. Again, this program had a priority in it, and the non-priority, the priority recipients received the full $20,000. The non-priorities were awarded based on their HRT contributions last year. That program awarded $249,495.87 in total. The third program was a program designed to aid online sales and teleworking efforts for local businesses. This was a very small program. We received in total $12,045.81 from the state, and we were able to award 8 recipients. We had advertised this program at a max of up to $5,000, and due to internal discussions and trying to reach more recipients, we lowered that threshold to $1,505, and we were able to award 8 recipients. The rationale behind that was we felt $1,500 was still enough to make some sort of difference in their online sales teleworking efforts. The last program, as I discussed, is slightly different. This nonprofit program came through the Department of Housing and Community Development. This program has a total of $499,692 in it. When we receive the funding from DHCD, as we anticipate later this week or early next week, we will be awarding 30 recipients. The maximum award for priority recipients there is $25,000. And then if you had received prior funding from the county and you were deemed not a priority, you were awarded 10% of your gross revenues. That's how we base that award. So to date, just to give the commissioners a full update of what the Department of Business Development has accomplished since roughly June of 2020 when the pandemic onset, to date we've given out almost $13 million. So it's $12,985,448.16 to local businesses. We've given that to 1,157 recipients in the community. And that concludes the update on the grants. Does anybody have any questions on the grants?
Commissioners, questions? Thank you very much. Very thorough.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
And then our next update is on the enterprise zone expansion. So the enterprise zone is obviously a tool that's used for economic development incentives. It's a tool to attract new jobs and taxpayers, businesses to the community. Our department had filed to have the enterprise zone, that is the Hagerstown, Washington County enterprise zone, expanded. We have the right to apply for a certain percentage of expansions per year. So the Department of Business Development is very pleased to announce to the public that the Department of Commerce has officially approved our county's application to expand this zone. The enterprise zone is an important tool to attract jobs and new businesses to our area. The newly approved Hagerstown, Washington County, Maryland enterprise zone encompasses Census Tract 10.01, and the new parcels are on Sweeney Drive and Oak Ridge Drive, and they include the property formerly known as the Review and Herald Building. The new approval adds 328.85 acres to this development zone, and now Washington County, Hagerstown has a total enterprise zone of 4,409 acres. The DBD would like to extend a couple special thank yous. Want to do that?
Sure. And just for your reference, the map up there shows the lined area is the expansion area that we were approved for. I do want to say that the DBD would like to express how excited we are to have this approval in hand. This approval is the culmination of more than 8 months of county staff efforts. We would like to expressly recognize the efforts of county staff Jill Baker and Megan Jenkins from the Planning and Zoning Department. This expansion effort would not have been possible without their hard work and expertise in our local geography. Additionally, the DBD would like to publicly acknowledge the support of the Washington County, Maryland Board of County Commissioners, the City of Hagerstown Mayor and Council and staff. Without this collaboration, the newly expanded enterprise zone, again, would not have been possible. So we appreciate all your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan, could you give the public just like 3 quick examples of what that does, the enterprise zone?
Sure. The enterprise zone is a tool for attraction. So if jobs are created and investment is made, we're able to give a tax credit. And it's a shared tax credit if it's within the city. But the beauty of this one is there's not a high number of jobs. It can be one job as long as they meet the thresholds. So it's a much more open incentive than our local incentives. Plus the county gets 50% of those taxes back from the state. So it's a win-win. Yeah.
Very good.
I'm sorry, can you get us a listing of the businesses that were helped with those grants?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Sure.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Please,
you.
appreciate your report.
I would just like to thank the Department of Business Development. I know you were thanking other people, but I'd like to thank you for all your work you've done for these grant programs since June of 2020. And I wanted them to come and provide an update to you so you would see what we're working on now. In the enterprise zone, Linda, I know you've done a lot of work on it. Your whole department has, so thank you very much for that. It's an exciting thing. Susan shared it with me the other day. I thought it would be good to bring it in here and announce it here today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Continuing with staff reports. Anybody else?
No,
Larry?
they're with me.
Okay, with you?
They're
Okay, we'll save you for last. Krista? John?
Nothing this morning.
Okay, please, Krista, go ahead. We'll let John go last. You're the top of the show, headliner, save you for last. Thank you, Krista.
Commissioners, I wanted to announce that currently our new sworn Commissioner Charles Burkett has been appointed to the following boards. He will be appointed to the Hagerstown Eastern Panhandle Metropolitan Planning Organization as an alternate. He will be taking over the role of the Housing Authority of Washington County. He will oversee the I-81 Corridor Coalition and the Tri-County Council for Western Maryland Revolving Loan Fund as an alternate. Additionally, we've made one change. Commissioner Wayne Kiefer will now serve on the Disabilities Advisory Committee in lieu of Commissioner Burkett. So I just wanted to make those announcements publicly.
Thank you. Mr. Wood, we'll come to citizens' comments in a moment. We'll get to you shortly. County Administrator, would you continue?
Thank you, President Klein. Good morning, Commissioners. On behalf of county staff, I do want to pass on our condolences to you, Commissioner Klein.
Thank you.
And your dad. It was an honor to be there yesterday to honor him. And
Did I mention he was a World War II veteran?
Actually, right, in the honor guard, it was an honor for all of us to be there. So on behalf of county staff, pass on our condolences.
Thank you.
Just a few other things. As you all know, as of yesterday, all county buildings are open to the public. This meeting is open to the public. It's good to see people sitting in the gallery today. It's the first time that we've had that. We usually have people walking in and out, so it's welcome everyone, and of course welcome Mako. Welcome. I will get to you in just a minute. Just one thing that you may have seen the email. We have a force main break down in Westfields. Our staff is on site now making repairs. We'll provide more information to the commissioners and to the public as we find out what's going on there, but that just happened in the last half hour. So that's in Westfield's development. So for the citizens there, I know we have our staff is on the scene right now. And the last thing I have, it's a pleasure. I was at the airport yesterday morning, got to welcome our new airport director, Rick Johnson. Rick Johnson was the airport manager at the Frederick Municipal Airport before coming to Washington County. He lives here in Washington County. He served in the Air Force for over 30 years. So it was a pleasure to be there yesterday. When I came in, flights were getting ready to go out. Flights were coming in. It was a crowded airport. So I just wanted to go out there and see Rick on his first day and ask him to come here this morning. I want to introduce him to the commissioners. So Rick Johnson, Board of County Commissioners, welcome to Washington County. Welcome to the Washington County team. And we're excited to have you. So commissioners.
The floor is
Mr. Rick
yours,
Johnson.
sir.
Good
Please
morning.
introduce yourself.
I didn't say you had to make it. You had to say a few words, but you did.
Good morning, Rick Johnson, Airport Director. It's an impressive airport. and an impressive team that is out there working very hard to see that operation go on yesterday, and I saw it previously as well. So they all pitch in and do a great job out there, and it's a beautiful airport, and I'm excited to be here. I have a lot of experience in airports, and I'm looking forward to helping the team move that airport in the right direction, forward and upward. And if you guys have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Rick, I got to meet you last Thursday at the board meeting.
Yes, sir.
And you had a whole room full of people. You had to get it, you were baptized there by them. The consensus I got is they all accept you, and I think you're going to do a wonderful job from, that couple hours we were together.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioners, any other comments?
Welcome to our airport, and there's no doubt that you'll be doing some great things out there.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Congratulations, Rick. As you already know by now, the airport is one of Washington County's many crown jewels, and we're so fortunate to have it and the economic activity it brings to our community. I was not at the airport necessarily last week, but at PIA, the Pittsburgh Institute of Aeronautics, one of many great businesses that we have working on our airport grounds, and I'm sure you'll make your rounds to all of those businesses and learn firsthand exactly what they do, and good luck with that.
Yep, thank you. Looking forward to it.
Well, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you all very
Thank
much.
you, Rick. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Is there any other staff comments?
Yeah, the only thing I want to say is I wanted to thank Garrison Plessinger. His last day was last Friday, so I don't know. He's probably not listening today. I wouldn't assume he's tuned in, but I just want to publicly thank him for all his work he's done at the airport. So we appreciate his work, and so we just wanted to thank him publicly. So thank you. That's all I have.
Larry, anything from you while we got you up there front and center?
No, sir, not right now. A little bit later on, sir.
Okay. Well, that'll conclude
Talk a
our.
little louder, Larry.
That'll conclude staff comments. We'll move forward to citizen participation. Mr. Wood, would you want to come forward and be first to introduce yourself in the matter, sir?
Good morning, everyone, commissioners, county staff, and members of the public. My name is Chip Wood. I'm a retired engineer, and as many of you know me, I promote the proposed Civil War Rail Trail, which is a strip of land 25 miles long that goes from City Hagerstown down to the C&O Canal. I have two requests for the Board of Commissioners' action. We need the budget revised for the restart of the study that the commissioners stopped in 2012, and we need to resolve the 18 miles of property ownership question. I have checked with a local civil engineering firm, and they gave me a quote of $9,000 to do the deed research by a local civil engineering firm. The property records are right across the street in the courthouse. They didn't burn up in the fire, as was once told to me. Two county surveys support my requests. The Herald Mail paper reported in April 7, 2020 that Washington County did a survey of 300 people on needs for parks, and the results of the survey indicated that the number one future improvement people requested by almost a 2-to-1 ratio was for additional walking, hiking, and biking trails. Secondly, there's an organization called Healthy Washington County. It's a coalition of 30 public and private organizations working to improve the health of the people living in this community. Membership includes Commissioner Jeff Klein. The Healthy Washington County has a goal of reducing overweight and obesity by increasing physical activity. One of their strategy involves promotion of physical activities, including the use of walking and biking, and then the corresponding need for more trails. Additionally, county planning and zoning policy notes that there's a shortage of walking and jogging facilities, particularly in South County. Furthermore, in July of 2012, when the county study was stopped, the county records show that 700 residents supported the Civil War Rail Trail, whereas only 80 were opposed. I only got 2.5 minutes, so I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for your report, sir. Thank you. Mr. Ward, do you have comments today? I see you up there in the audience. Is there anything, would you have come forward if you have any comments, or you just here for the 50-50?
Thank you all who came to the luau. It's a great fundraiser event. We have nearly 120 some odd animals that we're now treating. They're all over the Humane Society in every office, in every place. They're going to be there for a little bit of time for their ailments and so forth. And that always costs a little bit extra money with the veterinary bills and so forth, and treating such a large group of animals. The event was very well attended, as you mentioned. Thank you all for it.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks,
Ward.
Paulie.
Seeing no one in the audience for citizens' participation, we'll move forward with our first agenda item, and we'd like to welcome our friends from Mako. Gentlemen, please come forward, introduce yourself, and welcome to Washington County.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Wilbur Levengood, County Commissioner in Caroline County. President of Mako started December. We've lost 6 months of being together and working together, so today's marking the start of it. So we're here to help, do anything we can. Get a hold of me through Mako, and a couple of you've got cards. I can leave a few more here, and everybody will have one. So I'm a volunteer firefighter in Caroline County. I'm a farmer in Caroline County, and I'm a former employee of Caroline County. I spent 36 and a half years working for Caroline County before I ran for office. Give you a little background on myself. I retired as fleet manager, so pretty extensive career and never left home. But I'm out now and enjoying what I'm doing, and hoping to have everybody back, being here without a mask and being able to sit and talk and see everybody.
Your timing is perfect for Mr. Burkett, who just assumed our lead role for Mako. So there you go.
Okay, well,
I definitely need a card.
I'll see that you get one before we leave. Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to Michael, and he's gonna bring us up on some state things that we all need to be looking forward to.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much, Commissioners, for having us as a guest this morning. This is our first time getting back on the road and in person, and appreciate feeling welcome here. Condolences for your loss, Commissioner, and happy to hear all the people having positive feelings about his service, and the many people paying tribute. So we join in those as well. Look forward to working with you, Commissioner Burkett, in your role with Mako, and I'd be happy to join on a speed dial or Zoom call, or grab a lemonade or whatnot to talk about the role representing the county on the Mako Legislative Committee. For those who might be watching the stream of today's meeting, the Maryland Association of Counties represents all the county governments, including the city of Baltimore, across the state. Our members are technically you all as the county elected officials, but we understand the lay of the land and work very closely with county professionals through a network of professional affiliates. So our county engineers and health officers and the whole range of our excellent people in county government are a big part of the association. One of my colleagues, Kevin Canale, our legislative director, had hoped to join us for today's trip, but as it turns out, one of the reasons he's back in Annapolis is there's a legislative work group talking about the Enterprise Zone program. And I'll drop a pin in that, because what you just heard from your department staff is exactly how that program is supposed to work. But there is another point of view, that are the dollars the state is committing towards making this a 50-50 program well-spent dollars. And that's them doing their job appropriately, but there are some who carry the point of view that the that this particular economic development program, the enterprise zones, is maybe not the most effective, and we're not getting the most bang for our buck, and are we rewarding companies who would have been doing what they're doing anyhow? That's probably the right kind of policy question for people to be asking, but we stand very aggressively in defense of these programs and their successes. So having staff like yours be part of that effort is something that may be in the offing. We've seen legislation each of the last couple of years to wind down or cap or phase out the enterprise zone program. So not everybody shares the enthusiasm for that. We distributed a packet of materials to all, and I don't have any intention of going through that in a bunch of detail. I want to be respectful of your time, so if I may, I'll speak just to a few big picture things from Annapolis, make a quick mention of our summer conference coming up, and then if there are things I didn't get to or you'd like to hear more about, you can be the guide on how much time you'd like us up here. So with that, let me start with fiscal and pandemic things, which are effectively hand in hand. Happy to see you all being back to having in-person meetings and getting the public plugged in. I will say I'm awfully proud of the county governments in general and their ability to keep public participation open and flowing during a time where that provided a greater challenge than ever before. But through a combination of online platforms and being able to receive streamed video and written comments and all sorts of different things, I feel like citizens and residents have had their say in local decision making in an awfully reasonable way under the circumstances. And there might be pieces of what we've done the last year and a half that end up becoming an element in public participation going forward. I think Annapolis may be looking at that. The health consequences of this pandemic were enormous. The fiscal consequences deserve attention as well, and it has left every level of government not really knowing what our true underlying economy looks like. You may have different points of view about the role of the federal government in providing aid to businesses and to governments and to employers generally and to people who are in the hardest of times, but by design, the federal government has come to the rescue to keep the economy from really falling apart. That's on balance for the moment a good thing for the maintenance of your local services. The fact that local governments were direct recipients in the last round of federal assistance, I think, is appropriate given your role on the front line of responding to this pandemic. From the perspective of your finance and budget officers, we don't know what the reality is beneath federal aid. We don't know how many businesses, particularly in like hospitality and some retail and so forth, we don't know how many businesses are propped up by assistance that probably aren't ongoing concerns or might not be able to rally back. That's a peculiar circumstance. You used to be able to look to things like the unemployment rate as a fairly reliable indicator of where we are. That's not an easy metric right now. The stock market doesn't tell a full story of the American economy either. So the people who are in that sort of crystal ball business anyway have an even cloudier job than usual. Back last year on July 1st, the governor thought this was going to be cataclysmic for our economy and for government revenues and proposed a big list of deep cuts to the state government on the first day of the last fiscal year, basically saying, looks like this is going to be really, really grim, and we ought to take action immediately. They deferred a lot of those decisions, and it's probably for the best. There may well be fiscal pain coming, and it may show up in this year's property assessments. I don't know, because the property market is not lagging in the way that in an ordinary slow economy, which, as you know, I suspect you have the same things happening here as in other parts of the state. So all those indicators are sideways, a way of getting to say we don't know where things are going to be a year or 2 or 3 from now. It's as uncertain as ever. We weren't in crisis mode in this year's budget in Annapolis, which is sometimes the case, that we're on our heel trying to cut against a $10 million or $100 million cut here or there. That wasn't the environment this session. We got the General Assembly and the governor to agree with a number of our priorities when it comes to federal funding that's coming to the state level. some extra assistance for our local health departments and for economic development and all the things that they're doing. So we came away from this unusual legislative session relatively unscathed. Sometimes I mark in terms of the bad news more than the good. So there's some things that I think we came away with good outcomes on. I'll mention a couple of things that are, I think, of real importance. We've got a couple more years with our health departments still working awfully hard on this continuing pandemic. There still is a messaging challenge to reach people who have not yet been vaccinated or have not gotten their opportunity. To some degree, this is a matter of public persuasion, but that those numbers are looking better. But I think you're doing the right thing by still having encouragement, publicly and in forums like this and in buildings like this. So we're hopeful for a continued upswing on that front, especially if you read the various bulletins and news about variants and so forth. The importance of having a broad stripe of our residents vaccinated is awfully important. I'm not a public health expert, but I think that goes without saying. That said, there's continuing emerging guidance from what the feds want us to do with the federal funds, as you made earlier mention of. That is a bit of a moving target, but there's more flexibility there than was the case in the first round of federal assistance. That's good news, and it's recognizing the different circumstances of all local governments. We've got a lot of issues that are going to continue to be of high priority. I'll mention broadband because it's an obvious, maybe not on the first day of a health emergency, but over time as students are learning remotely, lots and lots of workers are telecommuting and trying to be productive from remote areas. Having a good, strong internet connection is moving closer and closer to being a functioning essential need. And the governor seeing that this was a priority for federal funds reaching the state is a good development. There's going to be a great deal of work to do for that middle mile and last mile to get more and more people easy and reliable connections. So that said, I'll stop there with a few of those big picture comments, but I'm sure there are things I didn't get to that may be of interest locally or that you've read about. Anything you want to talk about on policy, my team and I are happy to respond to all of that. I will just say we're very optimistic about the nuts and bolts of our August summer conference. When our board of directors made the early decision saying let's move in the direction of an in-person conference, we were prepared for that to be physically spaced out and maybe limited capacity and maybe every other booth area would have to be empty and things of that nature as precautions. The numbers on the ground in Worcester County are awfully encouraging, and the trend line is as well. So all things are pointing toward this year's event looking really, really close to normal, basically back to full capacity. And we might have some places where there are empty seats and other things along those lines, but I think it may look and feel rather like the meetings that you're trying to conduct here, that more or less back to normal. So I'm optimistic on that front, but it's our priority to provide a safe but also productive opportunity for exchange and education that we all value. So we want to get back to that kind of normal as well. So that said, Annapolis and Mako are pulling through this like everybody else, and really happy to be on your agenda today. So thanks for the time.
Commissioners, questions, comments? I have one in regards to the enterprise thing. It's important to us. We're 12 miles wide. We could easily lose someone to West Virginia or Pennsylvania, so that added incentive can help keep a business or have a business relocate here instead of going across the river or across the Mason-Dixon line. So when you're with our colleagues down there in Annapolis, that's an important maybe factor or a bit of information to relay to them, because sometimes that's the difference whether they go north or south.
12 miles wide at our
belt,
1.8 miles in Hancock. My backyard, I see all three states.
You can see Pennsylvania from your house, and Kentucky, and West Virginia. Anyway, yeah, it's a good comment.
So I just say on enterprise zones, that perspective is awfully valuable. And I will say, it's not wonderful to hear that there's a work group talking about whether this program is worthwhile. That's not great. But the fact that this is an informal work group as opposed to a bill has passed and now we're phasing this thing out is testament to we've had economic development directors from multiple jurisdictions come to Annapolis, be at the table, and make exactly that case. So
You're welcome to bring them to Washington County. We'll give them a tour of how that's short of that distance.
that may be the kind of thing that we need to try and win the day on this issue, but I appreciate that.
Thank you. Commissioners, anyone
I have a
else?
question, not necessarily about state policy per se or any legislation, but as you're traveling around and visiting all the counties, kind of curious if you've had any conversations about some jurisdictions are using the federal stimulus money for, I don't know if hazard pay is the right terminology, but some kind of incentive for their employees that have worked during COVID. Just wondering what that looks like across the counties.
I don't know, you want to speak to
We
the county?
did initially, probably February through May of last year, and then discontinued it and used it for the people and the businesses to survive. Initially, it was to try to keep people in Caroline County for the necessary services on the job. Those services included our corrections, our paramedics, the EMTs. Caroline County does not have a hospital. We transport everybody to a hospital, either in Delaware and in another county. We have one facility is open 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's it. And they're not a full service. So with that on mind, those people need to be on the job 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days. And that gave them a little extra incentive to be there. Our public works departments, we staggered them out. And they worked different shifts, different crews came to work at different times, and we're segregated to a vehicle alone to go to the job site, but it worked. And I'm proud of the citizens and the people in the county and what they did. And I can only speak for my county. But I can tell you over the years, I've been to your airport, I'm jealous. Okay? I attended an ag meeting up there. I've been to your community college with Commission on Aging. So I've seen things in Hagerstown and in Washington County. I go through a few times a year, so things change here. But the important thing is we're all going to have to work together and come up with answers. Hazard pay was good initially to keep people motivated. I think at this point in time, we're leaning to come out of that pandemic and the emergency, and I don't think it's any further warranted out of it at this point. I'm not totally familiar with your fire service. Ours is totally volunteer. So we've done things to help the fire companies simply because none of our fundraisers are working. We're on probably 10% of our fundraisers for our fire companies.
Yes.
So they just can't function, and what they're doing competes directly with the food service people that are in the county, so trying to keep that at a limit.
I guess be more specific, Wayne, with any of that money that we're receiving, is that specific to reward our county employees?
So
has any county done that? Is that within the rules? Or
So I think the answer to, is it within the rules for the ARPA funds that we're just seeing now? The answer is unequivocally yes.
Okay.
You have the ability to do that. So this conversation is happening in some form in counties and in cities. By the way, there's municipal distributions that in some cases are, in our state, disproportionate to their role in the kind of response to this circumstance. But I think this is happening in lots of places, but it's probably going to happen somewhere. It may, in some cases, be a function of to what degree the employees are unionized, and if through collective bargaining, the employee units would prefer B rather than A, we may see different jurisdictions go different directions. All of that is on the table, I think.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any other questions, comments?
You'd said Wacomico County does not have a hospital?
Caroline.
Caroline.
No, sir.
Okay. What's,
We
do you know their population?
33, almost 34,000.
I I was just curious.
We also are involved in the enterprise, and we have a 66-mile border with the state of Delaware. They make it real attractive to jump across the line.
Where are you headed to next? You know John Barr went to every county in Maryland.
That's right.
Thank you, John Barr.
Well, I'm trying.
LaVale this afternoon, and we're
very
gonna head
good.
to lunch in Allegheny, and this afternoon in Garrett, so we're making the Western Maryland swing.
Well, we want to thank you for your time and coming to visit with us. You're welcome back anytime, and bring those enterprise zone people up. We'll show them.
Hey,
That's right. Yeah, anything we can do to help on that, just reach out to us. Be happy to do it. We can come down or they
Arrange
can
a
come up here.
tour.
And I wanted to thank Mako and Michael especially and your staff for, we reach out, all of our staff reach out to you all the time and you're very responsive. And I participate in a lot of those Zoom calls about all kinds of things. Even just last week, I think Kirk reached out to you about the blueprint implementation coordinator that we're trying to figure out.
Right.
I don't know if you have anything to say about that other than there's just not any guidance for it, but.
Right. I don't think we want to do the 15 minutes we could spend on that topic, but in the 60-second version, with the state on an ambitious plan to ramp up what we do for public schools in expectations and funding. One piece of that was meant to bring the county government as a partner and have an implementation person who shepherds all this stuff along for the next decade be jointly appointed by the governing body of the county and the Board of Education. So that's a structure we haven't seen before. Now, whether that will work perfectly and smoothly and who that person is and where he or she gets paid is essentially a local decision. There's no 7-page guidance document that exists.
And perhaps before you go, another 60-second response. Redistricting, where are we with that?
Right.
That's
So redistricting has always had some element of art and some element of science.
Science? Did you say science?
There's some math involved, right?
Thank you very much.
So, okay, probably the short version that I can give you, and it will get to the end of my expertise, is the actual data is going to be a bit late. The census is not going to have true data till a little bit later this year than is usual, and then the State Department of Planning has to essentially prepare the data correctly for your use, sort of precinct by precinct. So most jurisdictions are going to be in the unfortunate spot of probably starting the gears turning on what will be your process in advance of having the final data that you'll need to guide the actual ultimate districts. Okay. So I think it's going to be finger in the breeze. Most jurisdictions kind of know, the growth has kind of been over here and this place has been, what your heat map looks like more or less. So you'll be thinking, all right, that district probably gets geographically smaller and this one gets a little bit bigger, and we think it'll look like this, and then it'll be, instead of July, it'll be October or November before you end up with, all right, here are the final numbers, and we need to adjust here and adjust there, but the concept is more or less workable. Unfortunately, it's going to be tilting a little toward art rather than science a bit this year.
Well, thank you for that 60-second response. All right, gentlemen, commissioners, any other questions? Thank you. Thank you. Be safe on your travels.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Our next agenda item will be the Strategic Demolition Grant Application Submittal for Fort Ritchie. Please come forward and introduce yourself.
Good morning. I'm Rachel Souders, Senior Grant Manager for the Office of Grant Management. I have Jennifer Kinzer, Deputy Director of the Department of Planning and Zoning, with me. The Department of Planning and Zoning is requesting permission to submit a grant application for the Fort Ritchie redevelopment project to the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development in the amount of $250,000 on behalf of Cascade Properties, LLC. The department is also seeking approval to accept awarded funding and execute the grant agreement with DHCD contingent upon the execution of a memo of understanding agreement between Cascade Properties and the county. They are requesting these funds to assist with the costs of necessary sewer upgrades to facilitate the development of the former Fort Ritchie property as part of the Strategic Demolition Grant Program. Cascade Properties, LLC purchased the former Fort Ritchie property on April 7th this year. The new owner is proposing a redevelopment project that includes the buildings along Barrack Avenue for non-residential uses, thereby providing workforce opportunities. Due to aging infrastructure, the purpose of this grant is to upgrade the sewer utilities that serve these buildings. This is a shovel-ready project, as a sewer study has already been completed and proposed upgrades are under review by the Department of Water Quality to ensure they're being upgraded to county standards. The Office of Grant Management has reviewed the grant application, grant funding guidelines, and provided supporting documentation. The grant does not require any matching fund contribution from the county, but does require that the county and Cascade Properties execute a memo of understanding outlining each party's roles and responsibilities related to the project. The performance period for the grant is October 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2022, so it's a one-year period, and there are no unusual conditions or requirements associated with the grant. If awarded, the grant funds would provide up to $250,000 for sewer upgrades. Any remaining balance is the responsibility of Cascade Properties, LLC. The total project cost is $289,613.50. Does anybody have any questions?
The cost to the county, they make up the difference. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Commissioners, comments, thoughts? Motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
First and second, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. 5-0, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You're welcome. Next on our agenda, contract award PUR 1503. I believe that's Rick Curry. Mr. Atchison, please come forward, introduce yourself and the matter.
Good morning, Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing.
Larry Atchison, Director of Human Resources.
Subject before you is contract award PUR 1503, record keeping actuarial consulting services for the retirement plan, length of service award program, and other post-employment benefits under GASB 45. Recommended motion, move to award the contract for record keeping and actuarial consulting services for the retirement plan, length of service award program, and other post-employment benefits. Sponsor, responsible proposer, Boughton Partners Incorporated, Baltimore, Maryland. This is a one-year term with 4 one-year options for renewal. The total cost for the 5-year service is $279,815. The service consists of an annual evaluation, including a GASB disclosure and employment retirement benefits report, quarterly investment reviews, benefit calculations, and approximately 10 service buyback calculations annually. The RFP was advertised in the local newspaper on the various websites as listed in the RF. As you can see in the RF, there were 7 companies that were present at the represented at the pre-proposal teleconference. There were 4 proposals. Of those 4, 3 were deemed to be responsive. Those 3 proposals were evaluated by the coordinating committee, and the using department did the reference checks. The fiscal impact, the fees are paid for under the pension fund, and there's price proposal tabulation sheet of Boughton Partners price proposal. Are there any questions?
Commissioners, comments, questions?
Motion to approve.
I have a first. Is there a second? I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. Next on our agenda is a public hearing. It's scheduled 11 o'clock. We're right on time. Next on the agenda is a public hearing concerning application for zoning text amendment RZ 20-002. The purpose of this hearing is to hear public testimony concerning the matter. The procedure is as follows. We will first have staff introduce the matter, after which the hearing will be open for public comment and testimony. Each speaker will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to testify. After everyone who wishes to speak has done so, the hearing will be closed. The commissioners may discuss the issue and take any action that they deem appropriate, including adoption or rejection of the proposal, or they may take the issue under advisement and deliberate at a later date. Jill, would you introduce yourself and the matter?
Good morning, Commissioners. Jill Baker, Director of the Department of Planning and Zoning. As stated before you today, is a public hearing for a text amendment to the zoning ordinance regarding short-term residential rentals. As stated in the discussion on your ARF, that these are not a new trend in land use. You probably know these more as their common terms as an Airbnb or a Verbo, things like that. These types of uses have been motivated over time by tourists and visitors who wish to have some different accommodations than you would typically get at a hotel complex. These things probably originally started as bed and breakfasts, where you would have an owner-operator who lived in the home and would provide the services to those residents. That has sort of evolved over time to now where they are no longer owner-occupied, where the owner is simply renting out the unit either in whole or in part to different people for the purpose of short-term stays. So as part of that, we've had to amend our ordinances, and you'll see included within the agenda packet is the requested text amendment whereby the short-term residential rentals would be permitted in the rural areas of the county, a special exception use in the rural village, and then special exception uses within the residential districts of the county. The reason for that has to do with compatibility and proximity to other existing residential areas. We haven't received any official comment regarding these topics, but other people throughout the country have made comments about how they are concerned about people that they don't know entering into their neighborhood, and the turnover that's created by these types of uses. So we felt that that was probably the best way to handle some of those concerns from our citizens, so that public comment could be sought in those particular situations. That's all I have on the topic today. Again, this was heard by the Planning Commission at their regular meeting on April 5th, and they made a recommendation at their May 3rd meeting, unanimously supporting the proposed amendments as they're being presented to you today. That's all I have on the topic. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We will now open the public hearing for public comment. Anyone wishing to testify from the gallery, please come forward. Give us your name and address. Anything you'd like for us to know? Anyone from the gallery? Seeing none, do the commissioners have any questions for Jill? Hearing none, the public hearing.
I actually do.
Go ahead.
I guess I'm trying to fully understand this text amendment. So if I have a home out in the rural area or in anywhere, is this going to in any way get in my way if it was owner occupied and then I decided to move into another home and rent that house out? I'll still be able to rent the house out, or do I have to go through a bunch of red tape before I can rent it out?
There's a couple different scenarios that you're talking about there, and that's what makes the enforcement of this so difficult. The first scenario by which I think you're talking, where if you own a second home, and you live in one home and you want to rent the other one out long term to somebody who on a yearly basis or however you contract with them, that's very different than what we're talking about here in this situation. We have really no control over who lives in what home. We can't control who lives there. You know, federal law and case law has shown us in the past that you can't dictate who a family is and who can live where and that kind of thing. So in those cases, we typically just say, you know, whoever the owner is, if you need to rent that out long-term, that's your business, and we don't get involved with that. What we're talking about here is more of the turnover, the short-term residentials. So they may stay there a day, they may stay there a week, they may stay there 2 weeks. But what you're gonna start to get are comments from citizens or concerns from citizens in terms of phone calls saying, there's different cars in the driveway, there's parties all the time, what's going on here, we don't understand. And in those cases, that's where we can kind of step in and say, you know, no, you're turning this more into a commercial use than you are a residential use. And we define that by having this in the zoning ordinance and saying, by having short-term residential leases or renting it out, then we view that from the county perspective as more of a commercial use than a residential use. So that's how we're defining the differences, as a short-term versus a long-term. Long-term, we're not interested. It's your business who you rent to, who lives in that home, obviously within the other laws that are out there, but we're not interested in getting involved in people's personal business that way, no.
Did I hear you say that nobody in Washington County has expressed a concern about this yet?
No, we haven't
Then why
received.
are all these Airbnbs starting up in Washington County?
You know, I'm not familiar with that. That would be more of our plan review office who would receive those comments, so I'm honestly not sure.
And what are you hoping to do with this?
The purpose of this is, right now, the Airbnbs are not a conforming use. They are not a legal use. So technically, when somebody comes in and wants to rent out their house for a couple weekends or something like that, if we would get a complaint, technically, they're violating the zoning ordinance. Because we don't have anything really in our ordinance talking about it, we felt that it was important to address the issue because there has been an awful lot of support from the general public in allowing these types of uses. While there are the occasional problems, historically across the country, we have seen that this is a fairly well-regulated system. They do it based upon sort of like eBay, where you get the comment on the person who's renting it to you. Likewise, the renter gets to comment back, you know, don't rent to this person ever again or whatever. So we found it to be self-regulating, but it's just something new that the zoning ordinance doesn't address, and we need to address that. So that's why we're including it within the ordinance. That's what we hope to address, is to bring people into compliance.
Is it to eliminate it or
No,
to create
it's to create it.
red tape to go
No.
through to
The red
try
tape
to
is
do
not
this?
allowing it at this point.
Okay.
I mean, I think when you see, and Joe explained, but I think when we see new things that aren't addressed at all in the zoning ordinance, that does cause an issue with us if somebody comes to us because it's not addressed at all. So sometimes when you see staff bring things forward, it's because we're trying to address something that's new and it's not covered in our zoning ordinance. So it'll give some direction. So when someone comes and wants to do this, our zoning ordinance will cover it. I think that's.
Couple different reasons. One is to give property owners flexibility in the use of their property. Two is to protect your neighbors, so that if that use becomes incompatible or inconducive to the living situations of the neighborhood, the county has the ability to step in and say, you know, let's calm things down, let's bring it back to where we originally intended this to be. So it's again trying to be that middle ground, that middle ground where we can both allow and their profits if they can, but still have protections in place that if it becomes a nuisance or something like that, that other citizens have an ability to address those issues.
We're not voting to.
Today, the recommendation is no motion to be made. I was going to suggest we take it under consideration once we close the hearing.
Well, and I think you're opening it up to the public, right? Now, after today, the public will still have an
Yeah,
opportunity.
we'll close the public hearing today. It's already been, is that correct? It's been advertised and then.
Now that the buildings are open, I don't think we're having any additional time, correct? So the hearing would close today.
This has been advertised on all the
Yes.
rules.
Yes.
If you wish, we could.
And
I
then the
mean,
board could do that, but now that we're back, we were doing that
That's a
before
good
because the
point,
public
though.
couldn't come in here and comment, but, and the board can always leave the public record
If
open.
you'd like to leave it open for an extra week, we can absolutely
why don't we do that
I
since
think
this
we
is the
should.
first week that we're open, and we'll recommend to leave the comment period open for 1 week. We'll bring it back next week, because I wasn't ready to support or deny today anyway.
I think that's a good idea. I have two questions, if I can, real quick, Jill. I know this isn't necessarily over your purview, but with short-term rentals, Airbnbs, the one concern I have heard is about Airbnbs not paying the hotel rental tax that a bed and breakfast might have to pay, and their competitors, they provide the same service. Where does that stand? Do we know are Airbnbs or short-term rentals subject to the hotel rental tax now?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
This would be a step, because what would basically happen is, let's say that the legislation does pass for Airbnbs to pay hotel motel tax. Typically, what that means is that they would then be considered quote-unquote businesses, and they would have to have a business license.
Okay.
In order to have a business license, you must comply with zoning. Without this in our zoning ordinance, they would not comply with zoning, and we would not be able to allow them anywhere in the county.
Okay.
So yes, it does absolutely play right into that
So,
discussion.
To include them on hotel motel tax, would that require us to ask for legislation through our delegation? Yes or no? What's the timeline
I'd like to
on
defer that to the county attorney.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd have to take a look at what the
How statute
enabling
reads.
statute,
Okay.
yes, what authority it gives us.
Okay.
Would it be fair to say that it's happening everywhere and we're just trying to clean it up?
Yes,
So
it's already happening.
It's going on everywhere.
It's happening now, yes.
My second question, Joe, if I can, the parking requirement of 1 parking space per bedroom. I know some businesses that operate along the C&O Canal or the Appalachian Trail where their business model is to pick up hikers or bicyclers, not necessarily someone in a vehicle, or someone that may have more of a hostel setup rather than a separate bedroom. I wouldn't want to disadvantage those businesses in any way if their model doesn't require someone traveling to them by vehicle, but rather bicycle or on foot. I would like to see some kind of open opportunity that saves that business model too.
What they could do is ask for a special exception then from the Board of Zoning Appeals to reduce their number of parking spaces. We've seen that in numerous businesses where their business model shows and proves out that they don't need as many parking spaces for a whole litany of different businesses that we've seen. And absolutely, they would have that opportunity to get that kind of relief.
Okay, very good.
If there's not, please go ahead.
Also, is there any data showing how often this is actually occurring in Washington County?
I did have that data. I feel like there's somewhere over 60 Airbnbs currently operating in Washington County. If you go on the sites and unofficially, if you go on the sites and start looking around, if you go on Airbnb and search Washington County or Verbo or whatever, they're operating. And like I said, we know about it. And what we have done at this point is sort of told them, we know what you're doing, just, do your best to keep it under control and don't be a nuisance to your neighbors and things like that until we are able to get this information locked into our zoning ordinance. Should this not be approved, then what we would have to do is start issuing non-compliance violations to those people, letting them know that that is not a use that's permitted within the zoning district and that they would have to cease and desist.
So what we're trying to do here is put the 60, if there's approximately 60 Airbnbs in Washington County, you're trying to get them in a position to where they'll be compliant, and then every time they want to rent their property out short term, they won't have to get involved with the county. Okay, and then are there any initial startup cost fees that are going to be associated with this for government?
It depends, again, we're gonna go back to the discussion of the hotel motel tax and what all that entails. You know, our intent with this was to not create a lot of red tape. So they would still have to come in and get their zoning certification, which I believe that's in the vicinity of $75. They would have to basically file documentation with us that they are meeting the parking requirements and so forth. However, it would not be a full-blown site plan. We specifically say that in here, that we didn't want to go to that degree because we didn't feel that was necessary or relevant to what was happening. We do want to have some minimal data on file so that should we receive a complaint, we know who to contact and what the issues are and so forth and so on. However, we tried to keep the costs at a very, very minimum, knowing that these businesses most likely aren't a huge generator unless, you know, they're really involved in their business and so forth. But we did try to keep those costs and those issues at a minimum.
Just my fear is, I know government, they're always trying to figure out a way to take people's hard-earned money in any way, shape, or form. And I just want to make sure, if I support this, that the fee costs are extreme minimal. The government loves getting in people's pockets. Not you, but you know. Just
Us. You meant us.
We're all.
All right, Commissioners, if there's no more questions per your request, we'll keep this open for next Tuesday, and we'll bring it back on the agenda then. Is that accurate to say it that way?
Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you very much.
So you're gonna keep the record open. Anyone who's watching and may want to make additional comments can contact the county clerk and provide that comment through close of business next Monday.
All right.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. All right. Next on our agenda, revision of Washington County Employee Handbook. Lawrence Atchison, known as Larry, with the booming voice, please come forward, sir.
Commissioners, Larry's going to brief you on this, but I just want to tell you so when I came on board, there was some discussion with the union about this personal leave issue. And when Larry came on board, I asked him to look at it for all of our county employees. So that's how we got to here. So I'll go ahead and let
Thank you.
Larry brief you on that.
Thank you, John. Larry Atchison, Director of Human Resources. So just as John was saying, it's been an issue that had been brought up before I had the pleasure of joining the county. And then since then, I've actually had meetings with many of our employees, both our organized labor through AFSCME and their employees that serve as representatives, as well as our non-represented employees, really on a twofold piece. First piece is they would prefer to have the personal leave instead of right now, it's called a personal day. That was done under the pretext that a day was 8 hours, and 3 days are allocated in January and 3 days are allocated in July. They would prefer to have that in hour increments, very similar to what we do with vacation. That way they can have much more personal life balance, flexibility. It's actually a zero cost, that portion of it for our employees, that if they only need a couple of hours to perhaps attend to a specific issue, they can. There's also a potential overtime savings just with that portion alone. You're not covering somebody that might be gone for the whole day. They may only need a couple of hours, and you might be able to adjust your current workforce in order to handle that, so there's potential savings. But then after digging in, we have groups that flex between 5-day 8-hour schedules, and they flex to 4 10-hour schedules. And some of them flex, most of them flex between April, some go to October, November, others go to December. So when I was working through and getting the information on that, I've come to learn that those particular employees, when they were taking a personal day under the pretext, they were provided with 8 hours of personal pay time that you might see and all employees see on their accrual. But then we were adding an additional 2 hours of administrative pay to cover that entire day. So when you look at the number of hours that those folks are receiving in personal time, those that were working 5/8 or 8-hour days as the original intent of the personal day, they end up receiving 48 hours worth of personal time if they use it all through that year. These folks could receive up to 60 or even more hours if they used all of their personal time during that 4/10. So the proposal I have in front of you for that portion is that we use the same pretext that we use for vacation, that is accrued. We would use the same type of concept for personal leave as I show you in the chart. Folks would get allocated 24 hours of personal leave, AKA the equivalent of 3 8-hour days in January 1, and then those, and prorated, just as we do now, as you can see in the table. And then on July 1, all employees would receive again another 24 hours of personal leave to be allocated then. So, and by doing that, every employee is treated exactly the same. It's very equitable. Everyone's getting the same number of paid hours of personal time, same number of paid hours paid vacation time, sick leave, and alike. So to make sure, though, that the essence of the original intent was to be able to provide 6 days if they needed to. So the provision then says if someone is on an extended shift, perhaps they're on 410s and they want to use an entire day, they can use 8 hours of personal time and then elect to use 2 hours to cover the rest. They could use their vacation time to cover the other 2. They could use charity time, which they're able to buy and use that. Or they could elect to just not use any time and it would just be excused time. So the win-win there is each employee, regardless of what shift they're on, would still have the availability of 6 days off the schedule. All employees would receive the exact same amount of hours of paid time, and our citizens and taxpayers would receive, according to last year's calculations, and I want to thank the folks in payroll for helping me with that and pulling it through, over $23,000 in savings, labor savings, if we go to this model versus what we did last year. We'd be able to institute that at least for the back half of this year or the start of the fiscal year fiscal year 2021. This proposal would not only be in the handbook, I want to mention that this exact same language would go into PR 34, which is the leave policy. I want to thank our Assistant General Counsel for bringing that to my attention. I want to make sure I mention that so it's totally upfront. This exact same language that you see in front of you, gentlemen, would also go into the policy as well as the handbook.
So they currently get 48 hours per year?
If you're on a 5-day, 8-hour schedule, that is correct. They get 3 days of 8 hours, and they get, if you're on a 5-day.
So what do we currently get? What do the employees currently get?
If you're on a 5-day.
Forget about all that.
Okay.
What do they currently get? Are they supposed to get 5 days personal leave per year?
They get 6 days total per year,
Okay,
so they get 3 the first half of the year and 3 in the second.
Okay, so they currently get 6.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And there's no change in that from what I proposed. They could still take 6 days. It's the number of hours
I understand
allocated.
that.
Yes, sir.
I have a couple of concerns. First of all, it said in there that they wouldn't have to pre-schedule this. And so, to me, if somebody decides they want to take an hour or two without scheduling it, they're putting undue stress on somebody else because they don't know about it. They just decided to pick up and take off. Secondly, I think that it could be a problem with people taking advantage of showing up late to work, leaving early, and whether or not they're going to actually put this time down, or if they get caught, they'll throw it in. I'm not suggesting somebody would do that, but I could, and then the keeping track of an hour per time seems to me would be a pretty big hassle to do.
Those are excellent points, sir, and I want to point out that on the second part, I thought of the exact same thing when you said about potential abuse. If I can take just 1 second to read the paragraph that would be in there. When advance notice is welcome and much appreciated, employees may use personal leave in 1-hour increments at their discretion without prior scheduling, explanation, or supervisor approval. However, this concerning personal leave absence patterns, i.e. constantly taking 2 hours of personal leave on a Monday morning, or repeating use of personal leave to avoid being assigned an unwelcome task. Again, these are examples, will be addressed by the Director of Human Resources upon notification and request. So,
I read that,
okay,
but I just still, I've never seen something like this before in all the years that I was in business. Would have never thought to hand somebody 48 hours in a year's time and say, here you go, just take this an hour or two at a time, however you feel the need. I just don't see how that can be, and I don't understand why the current way of use of take a day, do what you need to do. You get 3 days first half of the year, 3 days at the second half. That doesn't include your vacation time and your other time off that you can take.
Well, under our current system, sir, and I absolutely can appreciate where you're coming from, vacation has to be pre-assessed and approved. And sick time is only to be used either for the employee or sick family. Personal leave, even under the previous item, was there for those unforeseen life balances, something that's come up, I need to do this, I can't make this appointment during times I'm off work because of banker hours or something of that nature. Secondly, we do calculate and track vacation to the hour, and we're very successful to that. So I don't foresee the problem with tracking personal time in the same exact fashion that we track sick time and we track vacation time. So we do track it all the way to those small increments, sir, currently.
Larry, I have
go ahead.
I have 2 questions.
Yes, sir.
Who's going to keep track of maybe when this could be potentially abused? Is that human resources or the supervisor? The reason I ask, I would imagine some supervisors might be okay with that and just allow that to happen, and supervisors in other departments might be a little more strict. So I just would want to make sure that all of our employees are kind of scrutinized under that same lens, if that's the mode you're going to take.
Well, I think it's an excellent point. So you basically have 3 avenues in which to monitor that. Obviously, the supervisor. Supervisors, of course, and I'm going to default that our supervisors are ethical and would do the right thing, but they're also the folks that know exactly where their folks are all the time. A good supervisor knows exactly who's working when and what they're working on. That would be number 1. Number 2 would definitely be if something came to my attention or we see a pattern. The pattern then comes from looking at the records, not only through payroll but myself. And we can definitely put that into place. I was talking with payroll about that. We can take the opportunity to look to see if we start to see patterns. We look at patterns on many different occasions. We look at patterns sometimes if someone is on intermittent FMLA. We sometimes look at patterns to see are they using it appropriately or are they potentially abusing it. Again, a pattern doesn't necessarily mean it's being abused, but just as you pointed out, and I couldn't agree more, it does give a highlight that somebody should take a look. And quite candidly, that would be a person of myself or my department, because Human Resources is the group that is to balance the county's interests and our citizens and taxpayers, as well as the interest of our employees. So absolutely, I don't disagree with you that it's really a threefold piece. It's upon notification, it would be upon the supervisor, or to be upon payroll saying, hey, I just want to alert you, employee XYZ seems to be doing the same thing with personal leave each pay period. Okay, that would be a cause for me to check it out and investigate and see if there is a reasonable explanation for that, or if there is not.
And we will be able to track that, because we all enter our time electronically, so when you put in regular time or holiday time or vacation time or personal leave or charity, it's all shown up in our electronic system. So we'll be able to monitor like we do everything else.
Correct. And the supervisor approves that time card.
And so right now, when you put in a personal leave, like if I take a personal day off, it counts as 8 hours, and I will put that in there. So it would show up. So if you went in and searched right now, you would say, okay, John worked, 4 days of regular hours and then 1 day of personal day. So that's how it shows up now. Now, if the board would approve this, it might show hours. So it may show 4 hours of regular time and 4 hours of personal leave if I took a half a day.
What did we do in the past if little Johnny gets sick and I got to leave an hour? See, we're not reinventing the wheel here.
We are not, sir.
No, I mean, okay, so little Johnny gets sick. I got to take an hour. I got to leave early and go get him at the doctor's or school or wherever. I mean, that happens all the time. What happened before this when little Johnny got sick and I have to leave, or all of a sudden I got my husband's broke down, I got to go get him, or I just want to take off and go lay by the pool? What did we do in the past in that? If someone wanted to leave 2 hours early.
Well, from my understanding, sir, they called it flex time, where that person would be required within that pay period to make that time back up.
So I'm not sure I have a problem with somebody having to get it if they got the time and they get paid for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really see a problem with it. I mean,
I think, just let me clarify. I think that sometimes they may be use sick. If their child is sick, they may be able to just take sick time. If we were flexible, as they may be allowed to take vacation or something like that, or some other, you mentioned some charity time. We don't really do a lot of flex time, but it's I mean, obviously, we work with our employees on that, so if somebody has to leave, and you're right, I mean, somebody calls and says, hey, I'm stuck somewhere and you have to leave work, our supervisors are very flexible when it comes to that. If it's a child who's sick, I think they can probably use sick time. If not, they could use vacation or some sort of charity time if they had some time. So we work with them on that. I mean, I think what we were trying to do here was to give someone, because right now you have to take a personal day. So you have to take the whole day. Whereas if you could only take a half a day.
So basically, we're breaking it down into hour flex time, you said.
You could either, you could take vacation, or if it fell under sick, or.
But you couldn't take 2 hours?
You'd have to take the whole day.
So I could get paid for 2 hours now under this. But before I never got paid for 2 hours if I had to leave. I know people have to leave.
Yeah,
There's all kinds of doctor's appointments. There's a million things.
I think our staff has been flexible to allow vacation, even though normally you have to schedule that ahead of time. We would allow that to happen, I think, right?
Have you haven't really addressed the issue of somebody, of John Smith, jumping up and saying, I gotta go, leaving somebody empty-handed.
Personal time is personal time. If I have to, on the spur of the moment, I have to go and do something.
Yeah, but right now, they have to schedule that personal time.
No, sir, they do not, sir. Under the current rule, I could literally, I report to John, I could say I'm taking a personal day tomorrow. You call in the morning
and say, I have to take a personal day.
Or I have to take a personal day now, John, and
we're not
because.
changing
Well, some sort of notice is
We're not changing
required.
that.
No, there is no change there. There is not a notice
Yeah,
at
my
this
thoughts
point.
are, if the concern would be for the employees, and this is just me, they just unfortunately have to use 6 personal days during their 10-hour day. I wouldn't be opposed, I don't think, to increasing the personal time to 60 hours and do the hours and figure out how we could, maybe they give up a sick day and convert it to personal time. I don't know. I don't know how you would do something like that. I'm not interested in giving them more time off or more sick days or anything like that. But if there's a way that we could figure out where they would still have 6 days based on hours, 60 hours, would give them 6 days, 6 10-hour days off, because that's what they're doing now. If they're using all of their sick time, they're getting 60 hours for 6 days off. If they're using it during their 10-hour day.
For sick time, sir, that is correct.
I meant personal time.
Personal time. Yeah. Right now, sir, if they take a personal day where they're on a 10-hour shift,
I understand.
They're doing the 8, and the county is giving the other 2. This proposal would say, okay, if you're on a 10-hour shift and you want to take an entire day, you have the options, even an option of only using 8 hours and not using the other 2, or you have the option of tapping into your personal, your vacation, or that charity time that some folks have bought.
And we're talking about the same thing.
Yes, sir.
How we get there.
Yes, sir.
I've seen companies do like half days, and that would make a little more sense to me than to do it by the hour. I could see somebody, and that would break that then down to 6 increments instead of just 3 per quarter or half year. Or if you want to look at it would break it down to 12 options instead of 60 options.
Well, any increased flexibility to a full day is obviously more flexibility for our employees. However, when you look at the actual allocation, if we default that our employees are good employees and they'll do the right thing, and I believe honestly that our employees overall very much are ethical and will do the right thing. If they just need a couple of hours, sir, why not give them that opportunity to use that so that they can come back and really be focused for the rest of the day? I just look at it as in a time where we have come out of COVID, in a time where this really doesn't cost us anything. In fact, the proposal I have in front of you is a savings to the citizens and taxpayers. I think it's very important that we give our employees the maximum amount of opportunity to not only serve us, but serve their families. And by having that hour increment at points, sir, honestly, I think that's just a win-win for everyone. I think it's very, very flexible. I think it's very progressive. I think as we've come into this now, I think our employees honestly deserve the opportunity to be able to manage their personal leave in the same exact fashion they manage their vacation time.
What would be wrong, though, with a half-day increments?
Sir, I'm not saying it's wrong. And please,
Wouldn't that still be a benefit?
it would be better than what we have now, sir. I
Right.
would agree with you there. I definitely would agree with you there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say that I think any kind of increased flexibility would be good for our employees, so, and, everybody's raising some good issues here, and we've thought about those too, before we even brought this to you. But right now, it's a day, so, it would be, if it was a half a day, I mean, that would be
And-
the better than it is now, because if I wake up in the morning and I have an emergency or something I have to take care of, but I can get it done in, 3 or 4 hours, I take the morning off and come in the afternoon. So that's increased flexibility for our employees, so that would be great.
And try
Doing
half
it by
day
the
at
hours.
first and see how that goes. And if it seems to be going really well and
Yeah, I mean, that would be best. I mean, obviously, our recommendation is to do it by hours, but it's this board's final decision to do that.
What would be your objections, either of you, to a half day or by the hour? Any objections, or what would be, give me a pros and cons of that?
I think the pros and cons, sir, is the hour truly gives employees, and again, I default that employees are doing the right thing. I think that gives them the maximum flexibility while they can address the personal issues. And again, these are unplanned, life happens events. It should be most of the time when personal leave is being used. Because, and again, in those certain circumstances, they may not have to be able to be scheduled, aka the phone call comes and the water heater's broke in the basement and I gotta go. That gives our employees maximum flexibility to be able to do that, puts us more competitive in the marketplace, both for retention and recruitment, and doesn't cost us anything, sir.
So if there's many times I have to go because I have to meet the plumber, I gotta meet the.
Exactly, sir.
And it's an hour.
Right.
Or 2 hours.
Exactly.
And I don't really,
That's my argument now, and I don't like to negotiate against myself, but I will state this, that a half day is better than a full day, okay? So,
I understand.
My mama didn't raise no fool. If I get half a loaf, I'll get half a loaf. What I'm saying today is that I would prefer for us to make the step in order to, our employees are able to manage their vacation in 1 hour increments very successfully. Why would we not think that they can't do the same? Why would we think that they wouldn't manage it and give us as much advance notice as possible? At the same token, there is a small percentage of folks that, hey, might try to do something. We have the ways to monitor that, and if we see some sort of pattern problem or I'm alerted to it, I can assure you that I'll be all over.
I don't know, I know many times it's been an hour, hour and a half, I gotta go somewhere. I'd motion to approve what's recommended.
I'll second with a comment.
We're just got first and second, go ahead, Wayne.
I do support this proposal. I think, as you mentioned, it could be a savings for the county. If someone wants to leave maybe an hour early because they have an appointment or some need to, maybe that person doesn't need to be filled. We don't need to pay overtime just for that final hour of the day.
Correct.
So I can see where the savings is. The one thing is important for me is, as the policy is monitored, I just want it to be monitored by the same person. That way, every employee in different departments that might have a more relaxed supervisor or a more strict supervisor, they're being treated the same, because that doesn't happen currently, and I don't want to create another opportunity for different ways to monitor or follow out on a policy in different departments.
Well, I can give you my commitment that I believe in the concept of firm, fair, and consistent.
Okay.
I think employees respond best when we operate in a firm, fair, and consistent fashion. I'll take on the responsibility of establishing a way that I can feel comfortable with the fact that it's being monitored correctly.
Okay.
I'll make that commitment.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm saying, like, tracked and monitored.
I have a
Okay.
question also, charity time to buy.
Yes, sir. I've come to learn that they have United Way campaigns, and if you donate so much, you get so many hours. That's called charity time. It's how it's noted by the payroll.
Is there a limit as to how much
I think
charity?
Sir, I'm almost concerned. It's 16 hours, sir, from my understanding, that you can get. Sorry, sir.
And it's based on the amount that you.
Yeah, it's based on the amount you get,
I don't know
sir.
if 16 hours is
And-
correct.
But I believe it's up to 16 hours.
Okay, I have first and second on the floor. Is there any other discussion? All in favor of the recommended motion, say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you,
Good
Commissioner.
discussion. I appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Commissioner, for that.
Next up, Mr. Chris Boggs, would you
And to
please
take a
introduce
personal hour,
yourself in a
spur
minute?
of the moment, you don't have to give. If you
do-
can,
do
you give
not, because
notice, but if you
it's
don't.
It's really meant for, if I get a phone call that, my,
I just see it.
my wife has a flat tire and she needs me to come, that I can go and come
What
back.
was that?
I mean, that's,
What
or
there?
like you said, you get a phone call that your hot water heater's leaking in your basement, you gotta run home. and meet someone. That's really what personal leave is intended to. But we'll monitor it and we'll continue. If we have any issues, we'll come back to you. If we
Very
need to-
good.
If we need to adjust it, we'll
Hold
come
you to
back.
that. All right, Mr. Boggs?
Good morning, Commissioners. Chris Boggs, Rural Preservation Administrator, Department of Planning and Zoning. Here, coming back, I thank Jill for last week for handling the public hearing for me. This is for the Ag Preservation Easement Rankings, fiscal year 2022 for the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Program, which is funded and administered by Maryland Department of Agriculture. Between last week and this week, I only received one phone call regarding it, and it was just from a landowner who, he just saw his last name on the list of applicants and wanted to make sure it wasn't him, because he didn't remember filling out an application. So, other than that, the rundown for the program, it's our biggest land preservation permanent easement program. We've got 14,214 acres in this program, and FY22 is getting started. My applications are all due July 1st, and ideally I'll be able to have them in early next week. So, let's see. Any other questions regarding the program?
And being on that board, all of your, first of all, my condolences to your dad. I forgot to mention that in comments, and he was very well loved in the community. He was on this board.
Yep.
Dean was on this board, and he was farm credit for years.
Yep.
So again, condolences. But the board was made up of these guys know the properties, and I have the utmost I haven't been on half these, or a third of these properties. So kudos to them for really knowing what they're doing and knowing the lay of the land out there.
They really are an asset to this program, especially when it comes down to ranking these properties, because a lot of these guys, when we pick people that, are familiar with, the county, and some who are familiar with certain areas. We've got a member who's out of Clear Spring, one out of South County, Smithsburg. So we kind of try to keep it so that we have people that are familiar with a lot of the county.
I think they're all farmers, aren't they?
Well, Dad wasn't, but yeah, the rest of them do some farming. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah. Long story short, I haven't received any comments about the proposed rankings. Anything from you, Krista? All right, well, then the recommended motion would be to approve the priority ranking of the ag land preservation easements as recommended by staff, and send the 12 top ranking properties down to the state.
I'd motion to approve agriculture preservation
Is there a
easement
second?
ranking.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
By vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris,
And
our condolences to you.
Yes, sir.
And Jeff, same
Thank you
here.
very much.
My
Our
condolences to you.
fathers were in the same place, same time.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Klein, before we adjourn, can I just say one more thing? One thing I forgot to mention in my comments, now that the buildings are back open, we're inviting the public to come to the meetings. We are gonna continue to stream the meetings, so I meant to say that in my comments. We're gonna continue to do that. I think that's been a good thing for our citizens. They can watch the meetings from wherever they are, at work or at home. So we're gonna continue to do that. So, for as long as we feel like we'll do that, I think we'll just continue to do that permanently.
Very good.
Our staff does a great job with doing that, but I wanted to mention that anyone who's watching today will continue to have that opportunity moving forward. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no more items on our agenda, I entertain a motion to go into closed session. Motion, is there a second?
Second.
First, second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. 5-0, let's go.